grabbed my affair by the collar and threw him out of the window when he caught us having S**X. Never thought I'd be sharing something like this on here, but I guess life has a way of throwing you into situations you could never imagine. I've been a long-time lurker on this subreddit, and I've read my fair share of wild stories, but I never thought I'd be the one writing one. Yet here I am, seeking some kind of advice, maybe a bit of understanding. Also using here as some kind of diary or soundboard because I need somewhere to rant. Why? Because my life just got turned upside down in the most dramatic way possible. My name is Rose, and I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer. My husband Jack is 30 and works in IT. We've been married for about 4 years now, and in the beginning everything seemed perfect. We live in a very nice house. It was a gift from my husband's parents. We have stable jobs, and we were even talking about starting a family soon. Like I said, things were good for us initially. Our relationship started out strong, filled with love and mutual respect. We split the bills according to our incomes. Since my husband earned more, he paid 70% of our bills while I paid 30%. This arrangement seemed fair to us and allowed us to manage our finances without stress. In return, I took on more of the household chores, which balanced things out. Life was good. We were in love and happy, constantly planning our future together. We had regular date nights where we'd try out new restaurants, go to the movies, or just take long walks in the park. We could talk to each other about everything, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. We were like a team just tackling life together. We traveled together, explored new places, and made memories. We even loved cooking together, and even though my husband paid more bills and had no reason to, he still went out of his ways to help me with my share of the chores. Our friends used to often comment on how perfect we seemed. They saw us as the perfect and ideal couple, supportive, loving, and always in sync. And for a while that was true. We complemented each other well, and it felt like we could go through anything as long as we were together. But I guess everything doesn't remain the same forever, no matter how much you want it to. Over time, the pressures of life began to take their toll. Jack's job in IT became increasingly demanding, and he started spending more and more time at work. All the long hours and constant stress began to change him. He became more withdrawn, and our conversations that used to be lively were reduced to awkward and one-word exchanges. Our date nights became rare, and when they did happen, they felt forced and awkward. I tried to be understanding. I knew his job was important, and I appreciated how hard he was working to provide for us. But it was difficult not to feel neglected and unimportant. The man who used to surprise me with flowers and spontaneous weekend getaways was now too exhausted to even share a meal with me. The spark that was in our relationship was fading, and I didn't know how to reignite it. I remember the first time I noticed the change. Jack had always been very passionate about his work. It used to be something that energized and excited him. He would come home excited to tell me about a new project or a breakthrough he'd had. But gradually that excitement just kind of turned into a kind of weariness. He stopped talking about work altogether, except to mention how tired he was or how much he had to do. He started coming home later and later, and even when he was home, his mind just seemed to be elsewhere. Evenings used to be one of our favorite times because we would be back from work and would therefore talk about our day. But then it just changed. It became silent dinners in front of the TV. I would try to fill the silence with small talk. I would ask him about his day or share something funny that happened at work, but his responses were always the same. It was fine, or I'm just tired. It felt like I was talking to a stranger. Our intimacy also began to fade. The casual touching, the random hugs, the long, lazy weekends in bed, all of it started to disappear. I missed the way he used to look at me, with a sparkle in his eyes that made me feel like the most important person in the world. Now his eyes were often dull and distant, as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. I tried to be supportive. I made his favorite meals, planned little surprises, and suggested activities that we used to enjoy together. But nothing seemed to work. He was always too busy or too tired. I even suggested we take a vacation, because I was hoping that maybe some time away from work would help us reconnect, but he dismissed the idea because he couldn't afford to take any time off. The rejection stung. I started to feel like I was the only one fighting for our relationship, and it was exhausting. I began to doubt myself. I started to wonder if I was doing something wrong or if there was something I could do differently. I felt like I was losing him, and I didn't know how to stop it. I started spending more time alone. I began to find solace in my hobbies and spending more time with friends. I told myself that it was just a rough patch, that things would get better once the pressure at work eased up. But months went by and nothing changed. The distance between us grew wider, and our relationship seemed to slip further and further away. Our sex life was affected too, and at that point we hadn't made love in months. We used to be so close, so in tune with each other, and now it felt like we were just roommates, just living separate lives under the same roof. I knew I needed to talk to him about it, to tell him how I was feeling. But every time I tried to bring it up, the words got stuck in my throat. I didn't want to add to his stress or make him feel like he was failing me. So I kept my feelings to myself, hoping that somehow things would get better on their own. But they didn't. The more I kept my feelings bottled up, the more they festered. I started to resent him for his absence, for the way he seemed to prioritize work over our relationship. I felt like I was disappearing, becoming invisible in my own marriage, and to make matters worse, my own job as a graphic designer started to feel unfulfilling. I felt like I was stuck in a creative rut, and the daily grind of work and chores began to wear me down. I started wanting something more and different, just something to break the boringness of my routine. It was during this vulnerable time that I met Tom. Tom was like a breath of fresh air. He was lively, enthusiastic, and always up for anything. His zest for life was contagious, and he reminded me of the person I used to be. At first, our conversations were just light and fun. He was different from all my other friends, and I loved talking to him, but before I knew it, we started flirting. And from there, things developed into an affair. Tom listened to me in a way that Jack hadn't in a long time. He made me feel appreciated and understood. I know it's no excuse for what I did, but I felt like I was drowning, and Tom was my lifeline. Our affair started as a way for me to escape the loneliness and dissatisfaction that had taken over my life. But the thing is, what started as a one-time thing quickly turned into a full-blown relationship. I started finding excuses to spend more time with Tom and less time at home. Looking back, I wish I had handled things differently. I should have talked to Jack about how I was feeling instead of seeking comfort elsewhere. I should have suggested counseling or made more of an effort to reconnect with him. But I didn't, and now I'm facing the consequences of my actions. My once perfect life has been turned upside down, and I don't know if there's any way to fix it. I invited Tom to come over whenever I could, during lunch breaks, after work when Jack wasn't home, and sometimes even on weekends when Jack was working late. We would go to quiet cafes, take long walks in the park, sit and talk for hours, and of course we would have sex. To be honest, Tom made me feel alive again. He reignited a spark in me that I thought had long been extinguished. Of course, yes, I felt guilty. I felt like I was betraying Jack in the worst possible way, and the shame was almost unbearable. Yet I couldn't stop myself. The more time I spent with Tom, the deeper I fell into the affair. Jack became like a shadow in my life, someone I no longer needed or even noticed. The emotional and physical intimacy I once shared with Jack had completely transferred to Tom. Even when Jack's workload lessened and he began to make more of an effort to reconnect, I was too far gone to notice. He tried to surprise me with dinners, movie nights, and small gestures to show he cared. But my mind and heart were elsewhere. I was consumed by my affair with Tom. It was as if Jack's attempts to rekindle our relationship were happening in another reality, one that I no longer felt part of. Yes, Jack's efforts were genuine, and there were moments when I saw glimpses of the man I had fallen in love with. But all those glimpses were fleeting, and I didn't care because everything had been overshadowed by Tom. Jack would ask about my day, and I would give short, rude, and vague responses. Jack's disappointment was clear. He could see the disinterest in my eyes, hear it in my voice, but he didn't give up. I guess he continued to try, believing that we could find our way back to each other. Yet no matter how hard he tried, my heart was elsewhere. Jack was desperately trying to understand what had gone wrong. He asked if there was anything he could do to make things better, to bring us closer again. But I had no answers for him. I was guilty, but still yet it wasn't enough to pull me back from the affair. Tom, on the other hand, was everything I thought I needed. He listened to my frustrations, made me feel alive and valued. Our relationship was amazing, a clear difference from how boring my marriage had become. The more I immersed myself in my affair with Tom, the more I resented Jack for the life we had built. It wasn't fair to him, but I was too caught up in my own desires to see it clearly. I continued making more excuses to be away. I stayed late at work, took on freelance projects, and even picked up new hobbies. Anything to avoid being at home. There were nights when Jack would wait up for me, just hoping for a chance to talk, to reconnect. But I would come home late, exhausted from spending time with Tom, and retreat to the bedroom without a word. Jack's efforts to save our marriage became more desperate. He suggested counseling, weekend getaways, and even offered to cut back on his work hours. But it was too late. My heart was no longer in our relationship. The more he tried, the more I pulled away. The more I think about it now, the more I realize that what I did was beyond horrible. I can now see the pain I caused Jack. the way my actions destroyed the foundation of our marriage. He didn't deserve the betrayal, the lies. He tried so hard to save something I had already given up on, and for that I will always carry the weight of guilt and regret. I should have communicated my feelings, my dissatisfaction, and the fact that I wanted something more. Maybe then we could have worked through our issues together, but I chose to lie and deceive him instead, and now I'm facing the consequences of those choices. My once perfect life is in shambles, and the man I vowed to love and cherish has become a stranger, all because I let my desires overshadow my commitments. Of course, yes, the deception was taking its toll on me. I became more anxious and paranoid, constantly worried that Jack would find out. The guilt was constantly gnawing at me. It even made it difficult to look my husband in the eye. I started being more careful with my phone, deleting messages and calls from Tom as soon as they came in. I would double-check my phone history, my social media, and even my location settings to ensure there were no traces of my affair. I had to come up with convincing stories about why I was late from work or why I needed to go out on weekends. Every time I looked at Jack, I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it was almost physical. It was exhausting to keep up the lie, and the constant worry was eating me alive. I remember one particularly stressful evening when Jack wanted to spend some time together. He suggested we go out for dinner, something we hadn't done in months. I had already made plans with Tom, but I couldn't come up with a good excuse fast enough. Jack's hopeful expression as he suggested the dinner made me feel like the worst person in the world. I ended up faking a work emergency to get out of it, but the look of disappointment on Jack's face haunted me. As my relationship with Tom continued, my connection with Jack grew weaker. It wasn't just the physical distance. Emotionally, I was drifting further away from Jack. And like every lie, the truth comes out at the end. The day that changed everything. Jack had been acting more distant than usual, and I could tell something was bothering him. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just work stress, but deep down, I guess I should have known he was suspicious. The next day, I was supposed to meet Tom at our usual spot, but something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When Tom arrived at my place, he greeted me with his usual warmth and excitement. We talked for a bit, but I was distracted. As we moved to the bedroom, I tried to push my worries aside and focus on the moment. Tom and I were caught up in our usual passion when suddenly the door burst open. There stood Jack. He looked enraged. I should have reacted faster, but I didn't. Tom, too, didn't react quick enough. In fact, he looked quite smug at the fact that my husband had just caught us in bed. I rushed to cover myself with the bed sheets, but Tom just laid there on the bed staring at my husband with a very smug look. I think that was what further enraged my husband and pushed him over the edge. Jack stormed across the room, grabbed Tom by the collar, and started dragging him towards the window. Jack was obviously stronger, and Tom could barely do anything. In a fit of fury, he hurled Tom out and sent him crashing into the bushes below. I screamed and ran to the window to see Tom sprawled on the ground, dazed and injured, but it didn't look very serious. Jack turned to me. His eyes looked both heartbroken and angry. I knew then that there was no turning back. The life I had known was over, and the consequences of my actions were finally catching up to me. The affair that had started as a desperate attempt to fill a void had led to the complete destruction of my marriage. The days that followed were a blur. Jack had kicked me out of the house, and I am staying with my parents. They were disappointed and hurt, but they took me in. I've been spending most of my time in a state of shock, just replaying the scene over and over in my mind. The guilt and shame is just overwhelming. I don't even know why I'm posting here. I guess I just need some sort of advice and understanding, even if it's from internet strangers. I know Reddit can be brutal, so I'm begging you all to please not judge me too harshly. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me. I wasn't able to edit my original post, probably a glitch from my end or something, so I'm just making another one. For those of you all confused, you can check my profile for my original post. I never expected it to blow up the way it did. I made the post but started to second guess. I didn't want to delete it, so I just logged out and forgot about it for a while, only to log back in now and see tons of engagement on it. The amount of outrage, hate, and backlash I received was overwhelming. To address some common questions, my husband and I do not have children together, but we were planning to start trying. Our finances are separate as we have very different views on money. I was always more of a you only live once, while my husband was the exact opposite and loved to save, invest, and grow money. Unfortunately, he wants a divorce, and I'm no fool, no matter how much I wish it. I know there is no going back from my infidelity. I accept that it's over. My parents, however, not so much at first. They tried to stage multiple interventions, all to no avail. I told them to let it go, but they refused and were even angry at me for not doing anything possible to save my marriage. But the thing is, what can I do? I cheated. I humiliated my husband and broke his trust. There is absolutely no forgiveness for that. If I was in my husband's shoes, I wouldn't even forgive me. Living with my parents now has been a humbling experience. They have always believed in me and trusted me to make good decisions, but I let them down. They were angry at me and said they wanted me to start paying rent since I had a good home and ruined it myself. Rebuilding their trust will take time if it's even possible. Losing my marriage has taken a toll on my stability, my home, and my future. I am jobless now because I had to quit the job. Tom had been the one to help me get the job. He's friends with the CEO, so I'm sure that even if I hadn't quit, I would have still been fired for sure. Maybe I'll try freelancing again now as a source of income till I get another job. Tom was luckily not fatally injured from the fall. He did, however, break his hand and get a few bruises and scratches. He doesn't want to press charges, though, as he is now rightfully scared of my husband. He didn't expect my husband to get physical. At first, after my husband kicked me out, I was very lonely and still tried to continue my affair with Tom. But the excitement and passion of our affair had already been replaced with guilt and regret. Things weren't like before, plus Tom was injured and still healing, so we just drifted apart and decided to end things for good. I still do try to check up on him, though, as I feel immense guilt. I was the cause of everything, and I'm the reason my husband threw him out the window. That's pretty much it. Asides that life has been life, I'm depressed, I feel like absolute shit, and I hate myself. It's all my fault, and I'm being reminded of that every day. Worst of all, the so-called people I call my friends never once called to check up on me. Guess they all picked my husband over me? I will probably update you all after the divorce, but for now I need to focus on rebuilding my life. The hate has been relentless, and I don't want to dwell here. Thank you for reading. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a wild ride with its highs and lows, and I have to say the hate against me is still going strong. I'm even seeing TikTok and YouTube videos of my posts, and I'm still being hated and cursed out in the comment sections. Even the direct messages I get are either hate-filled or downright weird. So here I am sharing my final update. The divorce is done and dusted, and my husband and I are officially split. Unfortunately, I came out of it with nothing. The house is his, we had no debts to split, and our finances were separate, so it was a pretty straightforward process. I know a lot of you will be happy to hear that I got nothing after all. That was what you all said I deserved, but I'm trying to see the positives in all of this. As for my life recently, I'm still living with my parents who seem like they're still in shock from the divorce, which is hilarious, considering I'm the one that got divorced, not them. Unfortunately, I'm also still job hunting and looking into freelance work. It's tough, especially since the freelancing market is so tough, and it's been a while since I got into it. But I'm not giving up just yet. I'm determined to bounce back and start fresh. It's tough to see so many people turning their backs on me and blaming me for everything. I messed up, I'll admit that, but I also believe I deserve a chance to make things right and learn from this. The road ahead may be rough, but I'm ready to face it. And to those who have judged and condemned me, I get where you're coming from. I had let my dissatisfaction and boredom lead me down a path of destruction, hurting the people I love the most. I had sought solace in Tom when I should have been working on my marriage, communicating with Jack, and addressing our issues head on. The day Jack caught us was the end of one chapter of my life, but it was also the beginning of a painful journey of self-discovery and redemption. I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from the damage I've caused, but I'm committed to trying. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's the importance of honesty and communication. If you're feeling lost or unhappy in your relationship, talk to your partner. Seek help before things spiral out of control. Affairs may seem like an easy escape, but they only lead to more pain and heartache. So here I am trying to piece my life back together one day at a time. It's a long road, but I hope that someday I can look back and know that I've grown from this experience. That I've become a better person and maybe even a better partner. Maybe I'll even try therapy, LOL. Until then, all I can do is take it one step at a time and hope for the best. Thanks for reading.